I told it.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, everybody out there. How's everyone doing this evening?
Very, very, very well, sir. How about yourself?
Oh, just out here living the dream, having my mother's milk and a little bit of coffee.
There you go. There you go. Well,
So, how are you holding up over there?
doing all right. I think I may have caught a little bit of a case of the E. coli.
Okay, drinking some water, local water.
Well, the local water and everything. And then this morning, I started having the symptoms of it. And of course, the wife had the same symptoms all day today. And it just like falls into place. And I'm like, oh, it's not food poisoning.
So if your camera goes off, we know where you are today.
Yep. You know where I ran. But other than that, how you been doing? I know I was over to your place this past weekend for a fire.
Yeah, you know what? Thank you so much for coming over this weekend. That was such a good night. Got to use the old flamethrower. Always a pleasure when I get to use my landscaping and kitchen tools for federal purposes. It is a landscaping and kitchen utensil. Yeah,
if anybody asks.
Yeah, well, no, it was a good night. You know, being able to kind of just hang out. We finally had some good weather up here in New England, and it was nice to be able to just kind of get out and just hang out for a couple hours. Thank you for you and the wife coming out. But to the show today, so we're gonna kind of truncate the sponsors here a little bit, seeing as how one of them is now dealing with the blue checkmark fiasco. If nobody knows what's going on with that on Facebook, folks
now,
are
that's
just
actually something really
accounts.
interesting. Yeah, that's something that's really interesting. That
well, actually, if you watch this show, you are familiar with it because I was bitching about it about a month and a half ago.
Yes, you were. Hi, so Kristen Marie. No, it's just very interesting because the coincidence of so many people having their accounts suspended for no reason within a short period of time that we all know each other.
Yep. Completely arbitrary too. The rationale and reasonings have been so arbitrary. Because my wife dealt with it, I dealt with it, and your wife dealt with it.
If anybody, I should have been the one that got suspended for something.
I know people that are far more controversial than us that are posting things.
Quite a bit. So no, but so tonight's guest, I'm actually very excited. I actually have his books in my Amazon cart right now because the one series he wrote actually intrigues me a lot, and I kind of want to get his idea of his process behind it on that one.
Now, is that the Moonlight City or?
Yes, it's the Moonlight City.
Okay.
That's the one I did, like that kind of attracted me to like that kind of style for me. Okay. So if you guys don't know who we're talking about tonight, we are going to welcome on Mr. Brian Paone.
Oh, I think we were both waiting for the other one to bring.
Yeah, we were waiting for. That's the bad thing. Unless you set the rules of like, all right, you're going to bring people in, you're going to do this, and we don't know what's going on.
I felt like Schroeder's cat there for a second.
Yeah. Am I in the box? Am I out of the box?
I was like streaming or not streaming or.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's a pleasure. I have not, unfortunately, read any of your books yet, but
yeah, so it's fine. That makes two of us.
I mean, I've been hearing some great reviews about them, though. Like I like all the Amazon reviews that I read and everything, and then just reading the synopsis of everything. It sounds like you have some amazing stories.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I spend a lot of money every month on paying friends and family to write those reviews. So,
well, it's really not discussed enough how much those kind of endorsements from close friends and family can cost, because the amount of outflow we have just for this show,
it's crazy.
We say we have sponsors, but in reality, that's just people we pay.
Yeah. I have like an old college roommate that's like, it's your sponsor. So no, and some of them don't want money, right? They want like I have to cook, or they want like ice cream, or like a piggyback.
Oh, you talking about your kids?
Yeah. No, I'm talking about like my, like my uncle. Now I'm giving a piggyback to a grown man. that's like payment for a good review. It gets weird, but
hey, you do what you got to do.
Yeah. Oh, there's Damien. I was wondering,
Yeah, I was wondering,
it's
Damien.
It's not a podcast unless Damien has followed me to the next podcast.
Of course. This man does not sleep at all.
No, I just think he just like goes podcast to podcast. He's like the.
So what it is I am not entirely unconvinced that he doesn't have some form of like AI presence that he's just modeling, and he's just running 24/7.
He's like the podcast groupie, and I love it.
Oh God, yeah. Like it's hilarious. You know what? I love having Damien in the shows. He asks some fantastic questions and everything.
Oh yeah, no, I love his questions. If I ever go to Scotland, I almost like don't want to ever meet him because then like the image will be broken. It's kind of
never meet your heroes.
Yeah, never meet your heroes.
He exists somewhere in the cloud of my head.
Right now, he gets to exist as some kind of Scottish cryptid.
He's living in some weird dark shadow around like a keep. Like the keep, like the movie and the book, it's like, it's all ominous. And, you can hear the clacking of the cane as he walks. And he's like, I gotta go to the next podcast.
Hear the chains dragging as he makes his way.
I know, right? He's got like a brain in a jar in the other hand, shaking and the fluid spilling out.
So
Damien, we just created a new character.
Damien might make his way into a book now at this point. I know just happened.
Hey, these are how our ideas are formed.
Welcome to my brain.
Damien will be the ghost of murders past for one of your characters.
Yeah. Oh man, he's so silly.
And I can guarantee you he would.
Yep. Oh man! All right.
All right, Brian. So tell everybody listening a little bit about yourself, like a little bit of your background, how you got into the creative process of the writing. I know you're also a musician as well.
Yeah, that's what they tell me. So I'm born and raised in Salem, Massachusetts, and I lived in a funeral home for 8 years, from age 8 to 16, and I think when you're born in Salem and you grow up in the area and you also live on a funeral home property for your formative years, there's like a kind of can't escape, I think, that macabre kind of like creeping in, right?
Of course.
And you're just surrounded by it. Even if it's funny about Salem is that, like, being from there, even if you don't like believe or you're not into any of that stuff at all, it's just everywhere. It's just part of the air, right? It's just part of our everyday life. Just that tone. There's an atmosphere, and so I think that it affects people who live there, who are from there, a little bit differently. It has a huge like metal scene. We always like cross like the devil with metal, right? But there's like a huge metal scene. There's a big, huge horror fan base there. So it just breeds this thing. So I think if you're creative, you can't escape Salem if you're from Salem. Like you just can't get away from it. You're chained to it. If you want to talk about, like, horror is my favorite genre, although it's not all that I write, because they say you're supposed to write what you like to read. But the problem is that oh God, Rob,
there's
Rob's already like oh Godding me. They say you're supposed to write what you like to read, but I like to read everything. So when it's time to write the next book, then I go, well, the heck am I supposed to write, right? Because I love everybody. I love everything from Sylvia Plath to Clive Barker, that you can't get two more, strokes of the spectrum than that, really. Ernest Hemingway is probably like my third favorite author. But Stephen King is my first favorite author. He's my inspiration. He's definitely the reason why I wanted to become an author. And it was because 7th grade Christmas, my stepmother bought me my first Stephen King novel.
Which one was that?
The Dark Half. It was the new. So it was the new release, right? So here's a little anecdote of how I got into Stephen King and how that played out. I had been obsessed with horror my whole life, and I had started reading, the R.L. Steins, the Fear Streets. It was like
good old Goosebumps.
Goosebumps. Like, there was a lot of knockoffs too, right? At the time, there was like young adult, but they were horror, but they weren't over the top, right?
Scary stories to tell in the dark.
Yes, all that type of stuff. 7th grade, my stepmother, who was a big Stephen King fan, decided I'm gonna give Brian his first adult horror novel and see how he does. We'll just see how he handles this. Because at the time I was watching adult horror movies, right? I was like The Exorcist. Is my favorite horror film before the year 2000, because I actually split up my favorite movies based, like, I draw a line in the sand at the turn of the century. So The Exorcist is my favorite horror movie, pre 2000. And so she was like, well, he's obviously watching The Exorcist on a daily basis. I think he can handle Stephen King.
Yeah.
So she couldn't decide what to start with. So she was like, this is the story that I kind of got. She was like, screw it, I'm going to buy him whatever his most recent book is. And it was The Dark Half. So it could have been any book. It just so happened that The Dark Half was his newest release.
Yeah.
So she's like, fuck it, I'm going to buy that one, right? And I opened it. I knew who he was because I had seen The Shining. I had seen Carrie. I had seen Christine, right? Stephen King wasn't lost on me, but I'd never read that.
Yeah.
I remember being halfway through The Dark Half and going, oh my God, this is what I want to do with my life, right? I was just like, this is like, at that point, like I wanted to be a cop since 5th grade. But when I read The Dark Half in 7th grade, I was like, holy shit, like this is who I want to be. Like this, I want to do this. Like, and I didn't get that feeling with all those other novels I had read before, those more young adult novels. I enjoyed them, but I didn't have that like, oh my God, eye-opening moment. And I had that with King. And I think, that's why he's my favorite author, I feel like. And it's kind of cliche to be like, oh, Stephen King's my favorite author and he's my, my inspiration. But there was a moment where I just didn't, I was like, you can do this as an adult, right? And write for adults. And this is crazy.
Yeah. I think one of the big things that like stood out to me about your Moonlight Drive.
Moonlight City Drive, yeah.
Yeah. Moonlight City Drive series is that the review of it was Stephen King meets the Twilight Zone.
So that review is actually for Welcome to Parkview.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah, that was the other one that stood out to me.
So Moonlight City Drive is not really a horror novel, horror series. While there's horror elements in it, I wouldn't consider it horror. I wouldn't try to sell it as horror. I wouldn't tell people it's horror. It's a supernatural crime noir trilogy. So it's a detective hot on the trail of a Jack the Ripper style killer. And there's a 300-year-old witch from Salem, Massachusetts. And every time the killer kills somebody, she reanimates the corpse because she's building an army of ghouls. And when the detective gets wind of it, he has to make a decision. Does he side with the killer to take down the witch, or does he side with the witch to take down the killer? Now, that's my elevator pitch for that trilogy, like when I do in-person events. Now, it sounds like that could be horror, right? I mean, everything I laid out, you're like, well, there's witches, there's ghouls, there's killings. Yeah. It's more along the lines of like Sin City. It's more along that type, more like a Natural Born Killers feel than a horror feel.
More like a Frank Miller graphic novel kind of thing.
Yeah, it's. I definitely wrote that kind of with that feeling. I wanted that feeling to come through, and I didn't want it to be like an Anne Rice novel, right? I didn't want it to feel like while there's witches and ghouls, I never wanted you to think you were reading a horror novel, because the point of the book's not to scare you. The point of the book is to give you that Silence of the Lambs moment. So it's definitely the tone of it. So what you were talking about, the Stephen King meets Twilight Zone, that was someone reviewed that for my novel Welcome to Parkview, which is a horror novel, which I bill and I sell and I advertise as an actual horror novel. And that's about a town where it's a normal town that I created in my head, like Stephen King created Castle Rock. He kind of Castle Rock, and I created Parkview. Parkview is my fictional town, and in this town, weird things start happening to people, but different things start happening to different people. So what happens to you might not happen to you, it might not happen to me, but everybody is like, how come something weird is happening to all of us while they're specific to the person? And then they got to figure out why the heck the town is doing this and why it's, only there. Welcome to Parkview was my second published novel. My 12th published novel is coming out in September. Since Parkview came out, there has been a reference to Parkview or a character from Parkview or a something from Parkview in every single novel I've written. So I'm treating it really like my Castle Rock. Like,
yeah, you're.
Well, I was actually going to say this is your Dark Tower series.
Dark Tower. So somebody somebody brought that up, but none of the other books take place in the same universe. There's just a reference to it.
Well, and again, I think that would make it the argument for your Dark Tower, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well,
it is separate. Sure.
If we want to, I mean, I'll take that. I mean, that's a compliment. Yeah, but
I mean, pretty much in all Stephen King's books, I mean, regardless if it's a brand new story or anything like that, you're right. It takes place in Castle Rock.
Yeah,
and there's all these eggs and all these other novels that are tied back to other characters that from past books, movies, whatever.
Right.
Russ, I gotta get you to read the actual Dark Tower series, man. Like, I need you to. I need you to read that series.
Yeah, those are. Yeah,
I don't want to because I've heard terrible things.
No,
you should. No, I would say
first off, they're amazing.
Opinion, and if you don't like it, then just stop. But I would at least.
The movie was horrifically bad.
Yeah, yeah.
But the book itself is a wonderful horror thriller, like psychological spaghetti western, and there's no other way for me to describe it.
Okay, so off topic here really quick. Denise just said in the chat room here.
I don't want to talk about that.
Ironically, as soon as we went live, the music box in their nursery started going off.
Yeah.
Now, Ian, the minute we went live, you had something happen behind you.
Right. Yeah. Shortly before we went live,
yeah,
I had quite a bit of stuff going on here.
And you had made mention about wanting to bring some of the equipment in to see.
Yeah. So Kim was wanting to do that a while ago, and I brushed it off until I started doing night stuff here. And
now you're just kind of like, okay, maybe.
Yeah.
So, Brian, as an author, I know you kind of like we are our own worst critic. Which of your books that you've written would you say that is your crowning jewel so far?
I hate that. I hate answering that question. I love the question. I hate answering the question because it's like asking me which kid I like the best or which kid I'm more proud of, right? Because I have 4 children, that I know of, and that's you like them or you love them or you dislike them all for different reasons, right? But if someone had to put a gun to my head, my time travel novel, Yours Truly 2095, I feel like there was a time and a place when that was written, and it got a lot of legs. It put me on the map. The Hugo Awards recognized it. It was the springboard for my career. Getting my first novel published was a springboard for my career. Yours Truly was what kind of put me on the whitewater rapids, and it hasn't stopped since. So and that's the only reason why I would say that book. In fact, I think I've written better. I think I have more, oh my gosh, more well-written novels. Is that grammatically correct? But than that one. But it seems to be that's without that book, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys. I think I wouldn't have a career. I think it would have sputtered and died, a horrible death, and 4 people would have bought my books after that. And Yours Truly is what I think put me at somewhat of a viable name, in the lower tier author world, so.
I mean, you all have to have your springboard somewhere. And
so since you brought it up, right, which is your favorite child? Well, I'm legitimately that was only a joke. I do not want you to even field a joking answer to that question. Being a father myself, just let's not create therapy bills later.
For me or for them?
Either. So I guess my question's a little bit different. I am an absurd reader, right? I go through anywhere between probably 35 to 55 books a year. And so like I'm a book a week minimum kind of person. So I guess my question, you said that's kind of your treasure, right? Because that was your springboard.
Yeah.
What do you think was the book that was easiest to write, where the story just flowed naturally?
So it's the same book that my editor, now I have 12 novels. Mm-hmm. My editor has edited 11 of them. So she's got a pretty good pulse on me, right? I mean, that's 90% of my, right? There's only one book she didn't edit of my entire history. And I've been published for 18 years in October, right? So
that's impressive.
Yeah. So just here, I'm just going to digress for a second and come back, and I'll tell you why. Being a musician, because I was a musician for 20 years, I feel like what makes a band great is their rhythm section, when the drummer and the bass player are locked in. So if you have a drummer and a bass player who don't even have to look at each other and they know where the change is going to happen, they can feel it out. I mean, you're clicking on it as a well-oiled machine. There are so many authors who are starting out or new or just kind of floundering, who don't understand how important having that same relationship that a drummer and a bass player have, that an author has to an editor. Right. So if you find that editor that is working, that is just understands you, knows what you're trying to say better than you do, she never rewrites anything I write, but she'll put a note in the margin and be like, this is a little bit, I knew what you're saying. It's a little confusing. Try cleaning this up, and she'll give me like pointers, and I'll be like, yeah, she's right. The sentence is clunky. The easiest book that I ever wrote is her favorite, which is really weird. So like her favorite, what she says is my best written novel is also the novel that I wrote the easiest. And it's my novel. It's Packet Man. And it's an urban crime thriller with like a touch of fantasy. And when they say a touch of fantasy, I mean, you've got to like really look for it, but it's there under the surface. Mm-hmm. And it just came out. I mean, I started writing, and it was almost like I didn't need the outline. I was writing, there was no plot holes in front of me. I just, everything, the scenes, I could see the scenes in my brain like they were a movie as I was writing them. I knew what the ending was going to be. I got to the ending with no problems. No character threw me for a loop where I had to like circumnavigate around and figure something out that I didn't expect to be there. Because that happens a lot, Mm-hmm. And and it was so satisfying to write that, because it felt like, so like I'm a runner. I run a lot as exercise. And there's some nights when you're running and, I've crossed, I've hit the certain mile marker that I tend to run. And then there's some nights where you're like, oh, I could do this again. And it feels so good, right? You're just like, oh, yeah, I'm getting it. Packet Man, writing that felt like that. It was just so, and then for my editor to return and be like, this is the best book you've ever written. Like, this is my favorite novel of yours. And it's one that I sell the least of. If I had to put all my novels on a list, Packet Man's down at the, down. It's not the very bottom, but it's down in the bottom, quarter. And, it's so it kind of bothers me sometimes, right? I'm like, take a chance on this one. It's like.
So it's funny is I have a slurry of authors that I follow pretty regularly, and a lot of the time I've heard very similar things being said about their books, where yes, they say like, this was the story that just flowed, right? This story wrote itself. I sat down, my editor loved it. I loved it. Right. Everybody I showed in the industry loved it. Right. And then when it got to market, it just didn't find a home as well as the other ones.
Yeah, that's what Packet Man is my redheaded stepchild, and and it moves, it sells. I don't give the impression it doesn't. It's not dead in the water, but compared to the other stuff, I just like, it's weird. I find that I've been finding that I sell Packet Man to people who have bought another book of mine, liked it, and came back to see what else I had to offer. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? So
yeah, no, because in my head, I'm thinking like, all right, if I'm going to grab this book, right? Because I do like to, when we have guests on, I like to do the show, and then because I'm petty sometimes, I'll wait until after the show to purchase, their art or their, we had coffee people on at one point, and halfway through the show, we were having a great show, so I bought their coffee, and we had another author on a couple of weeks ago, got their book after we did the interview, because sometimes you know, again, like you said earlier, don't meet your heroes, right? So every now and again you meet somebody and it's like, you know what? No, I'm not doing that. But I would probably venture, I'm definitely going to go with Pac-Man as the one that I choose, right? Just because you said that one flows most naturally. But what I've found as a reader is I typically enjoy the author for the voice, right? Not for the story. I enjoy the author for the voice. Like you look at some of like the modern fantasy writers, right? Like you look at like Sanders, you look at the guy that did Red Rising. I can't remember what his name is now, which is like wildly blowing up seemingly out of nowhere right now. But they have very distinctive voices. And so I've read everything Brandon Sanderson has written, like all 72,000 pages or whatever absurd amount it is. And his least popular book is my favorite, because I think it clearly defines his voice as a writer more than any of the other ones, because I feel like sometimes in this other stuff, his voice gets lost in the story. And that book is the one that he's said he had the most fun writing. It just flowed. And so sometimes I think that, and this is just, you know, my uneducated theory, is there are certain books in the lexicon of authors that are genuinely written for the author by the author. Where like you take that one step further beyond write what you'd want to read, and then you just manage to go one step beyond that, write what you want to read, and it's a very authentic voice for you. And so those are the books that I personally enjoy the most, because they inform kind of what the voice is in all the other ones. So I think it's really cool that you have a book like that, though.
Like with Pac-Man, I also, if I'm looking back on my last 8 novels, I feel like it was the one I had the amount of pressure to write. Like it came at I wrote it at a time when I just finished my historic war novel, which I had a lot of pressure to write because I interviewed a lot of vets from the war, and I had like people waiting for me to write this book, you know. So even if I had never advertised that this book was being written to the public, I had a whole group of people that I made them go down this dark path of their combat experience. So it's like I had a service to them to write this book. So I felt a lot of pressure when in that book's called The Post-War Dream. And I had a lot of pressure to write that, because when I got done with those interviews, I said, well, fuck, I have to write this book now. Because I made two of the interviews I did, they wound up crying during the interview.
Right, bearing their soul for the story.
They were reliving things. I interviewed a guy, and after the interview was done, you know, because I voice memoed all the interviews. When I hit done, and we're just kind of shooting the shit. One person's wife, she was there, pulled me aside and said, "I just heard stories tonight that I have never heard before, and I've been married to him for 40 years." Like she's like, you got him talking about stuff that he's been keeping inside for decades, right? So there was so much pressure for me to write The Post-War Dream. Even if I had, like I said, never had announced it that I was writing this book, I had this group of people that I put through the ringer so I could make a composite fictional character and drop them into a real war. That now, so that's what I mean. So when I wrote Pac-Man, I had none of that, right? I mean, there was just none. Moonlight City Drive, right, was advertised as a trilogy. So, I mean, I had to produce 2 and 3, there's just, all my novels tended to have some sort of expectation around them. And Man didn't. I was able to write it relaxed. There was no deadline. Nobody seemed to care that I was writing it at the time. There was no big marketing push, and maybe that's what hurt it. But I love that. It's like the little book that could. And people who have read it tell me that they just think it's a quick, easy, and fun read, and it's an adventure story. It's a crime thriller, and it's the closest thing I have to a grown-up version of the Goonies. with adults. And it's probably the best way to describe it is it's like an adult version of the Goonies, in San Francisco. So people who have read it tell me how much fun it is. It's a fun book to read. It's just like really, but it sells. I sell so little of it. I just wish I could be like, get it out there. But
all right. Well, anybody listening to this podcast, either now or in the future, go out and buy Packet Man.
Yeah, Packet Man. Just it's a little. I love it. You guys will love it. I probably sell. For every 10 copies of yours truly in Moonlight City Drive and Welcome to Parkview, I probably sell, 1 or 2 Packet Man, like ratio wise, right? And then I have my other books kind of snake in and out depending on what's going on. So, I have a collection of 20 short stories where I collected all the short stories that I'd written over the last decade, and I just kind of mushed them all into a book, right? But the cool thing about them is every single story in it is an adaptation of one of my favorite songs. And I don't tell you what song it is until the end. So
you went full Rush.
Yeah. I went full Rush.
Okay.
Yeah. So at the end of the story, when the story ends, you remember MTV at the end of the videos would have like the band name, the song, the album it was from, and then like the record
recording studio. Yeah.
So I do that at the end of the 20 stories has that little blurb. It's got the artist, the song name, the album it came from, and the year that the album came out. And I've had people tell me that they had so much fun trying to guess what song it was while they read the story, and wouldn't flip forward to look to see what it was, to see if they could, because I use very famous songs, right? So some of them are not so famous. Some of them are like more underground stuff. But for the most part, I use like, Queen, The Police, REM. These are songs that if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, they're just part of what them. Peter Gabriel. So these are very, very famous songs. So I've had a couple people since that book came out, which I loved hearing from them. I had a couple people tell me just like, I had so much fun, trying to guess what story this was, and then some, they were like, oh, I was like right twice. And the other time, I got like the one is a Tori Amos, Tori Amos. So it's just, Tom Petty. There's a Tom Petty song that I do. So it's stuff like that. And I just, Kenny Rogers, I bet you know what song that is.
Oh, of course.
Right? So yes, I turned The Gambler into a story, like, fiction. But yeah, so that's kind of cool to have that short story collection out there. Now people almost turn it into a game. Like, what story is this? Is it something I know? So
that's awesome. That is really awesome. There were a couple things I wanted to touch on here as well that really found myself interested in it as well. Besides for the author thing, you are also a detective for the police department, which is absolutely amazing. Have you ever taken any of your experiences as a detective and used that for one of your stories or anything like that?
So to preface that, I was a patrolman for 16 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I was on the street. I worked the street for 16 years. I love saying that because it comes with like 2 different connotations, right? Yes, I worked the street for 16 years. 2 of those years, I was the watch commander of the Warrant Roundup Task Force, where I had a small team, and every day we went and hunted down people with warrants. I was deputized, so I could leave the city jurisdiction and go county. I could go as long as I was state. Once I got deputized, I could go anywhere in the county. So I did that for 2 years. I'm going to tell you, I give the same answer almost every time. No, because I have to leave my cop life at work. Mm-hmm. And if I bring my cop life home, and if I bring my cop life into my writing, into this career, then I'm not creating a definitive line in the sand. And I think a lot of cops who bring their work home or let their policing, infiltrate other parts of their life, those are the guys who become a statistic. And I don't want to be a statistic, and I know that there's a healthy mental balance, and I don't let the two bleed. So it's just I leave it at the office. Now having a good amount of law enforcement experience, I also have my degree in criminal justice. For 4 years, I taught criminal justice at a community college. So I'm pretty well rounded in law enforcement as a whole, policing, detectiving, teaching. So when I do have a police officer as a character, what I write, the lingo is real, right? I'll draw on like how we would actually talk on the road, or what things we might say to each other, but I've never used something that ever happened to me in a book.
Okay. You're able to use it for authenticity as opposed to like source material.
Exactly. So I've never used something that's happened to me or something I've seen as a scene of a novel, but I use how much I know about law enforcement to validate any characters I have that may be cops or maybe something like that. And I don't have a lot of police in my novels. I tend to like stay away from them. Packet Man has a whole police department is after the main character. So when I switched to them, it was real easy to like write their lingo and write how they would talk to each other, because I've lived it. I've read some novels where, it's time for the police to say something, in the interrogation room or after they arrest somebody. And I'm like, everything you know about policing came from fucking Hollywood. I can tell, because it's all the cliches, like the gun is out and you go, let me see your hands. You have the right to remain silent. I'm gonna tell you right now, never in a million years has ever a real cop had a gun on somebody and read the Miranda rights.
It started reading Miranda's, yeah.
It's like, seriously. So when I read that in the book, it makes me roll my eyes. It almost makes me want to stop reading the book, because I realized that they not only didn't do any research, but didn't try to reach out to somebody and say, hey, I have this scene. Is this how this would have gone down? Like, is any, like if I'm writing a novel that takes place in a hospital, I don't know anything about a hospital. I'm going to run it by a doctor or a nurse or somebody and be like, am I way off track here? Because I would hate for a nurse to read the book and be like, this guy just, this is all Grey's Anatomy shit right here, right? Like, you didn't do any research. So, yeah.
Well, the biggest thing about that, it reminds me of a story I heard about the guy who wrote Sons of Anarchy.
Yeah.
Some of the consultants that they reached out to were actually members of motorcycle clubs out in that area.
Right.
Some of the consultants actually ended up becoming some of the actors.
Extras, yeah.
In the movie. Well, actually, one of them actually played a major part in the show. And
I didn't know that. I knew they were like cameos and stuff, but I didn't realize that. And then I got major parts.
Well, Otto, the guy that was in prison, that if anybody hasn't watched the show, I'm sorry, that bit off his own tongue and everything in the show. He's actually the creator of the show.
Right.
He played the entire role of Otto the entire time. So, I mean,
I didn't know that.
Bringing in the experience of like the people that actually have lived the life, and like you said, the lingo and things that they would do and things like that.
Because there's a nuance that you don't get from TV or movies unless you talk to somebody who is that profession.
I mean, that's Gunny too. Like Gunny was brought in as a consultant on Full Metal Jacket.
Full Metal Jacket, right? Yeah.
And that's how he ended up becoming an actor, because he was just like, "You're doing it wrong."
Right.
Completely. I'll do it in one take.
Right. Yeah, I mean, in Star Wars, they got real stormtroopers to come in and show.
That was really hard. The immigration policy. You want to talk about immigrating now being difficult? Back then, coming from Alderaan to the U.S. was just a nightmare.
They said the hardest part was teaching the stormtroopers how to shoot bad, because I guess they all were really good shots to start off with, so they had to.
They were all marksmen.
Yes. that was a learning curve for them. Yeah.
And that actually is a perfect segue. Lost his hand in that scene.
I know. In real life,
a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
Almost. No, but that's a perfect segue, because I also heard and read that you are part of the 501st.
I am, and I've been a member of the 501st. Today is my 20th anniversary.
Wow.
No kid. Now,
today, 20 years today. May 19th of 2005 was when I joined the 501st. It's been 20 years today. Holy shit.
Well, happy anniversary to you.
Wow.
So what's your getup?
I'm a
desert.
Dude, I'm 5'4". What else am I going to be but a Jawa? Come on, I was pretty much. Manifest.
I got a buddy of mine that's like 5'10", 5'9", 5'10", and he does the snow troopers.
Yeah, 5'4". It's still not happy. He's still taller than me.
Well, no, with the snow troopers, because it has the shawl that comes down.
Yeah.
Your face could be at neck level. No one would know.
Yeah, my face is neck level in the Jawa. I mean, I don't know what you Yeah. No, I'm a Jawa.
Wow. Ernie just said you're R2D2.
Yeah.
So now, do you do conventions?
Yeah, I do. So one of the things I used to do a lot more, when I first joined, the first X amount of years I was in it. But one of the stipulations to stay in the 501st is you have to do a minimum number of troops a year to stay active. So with my authoring career is really, blossomed in the last 10 years. I've got 4 kids. I'm working full time as a detective. I get in my minimum amount of troops every year, just so I can stay active as a 501st member. Yeah. And I used to go above and beyond and do my minimum amount and then, double, triple that. I'm at a part of my life right now where it's getting my minimum in is good enough. I meet the standard. I stay in the group. I'm still active. Who's to say them, in 5 years from now, my life might be different and I could be doing troops once a month again. I don't know. I mean, who knows, right? But right now, my life kind of only allows me to do my minimum troops a year. So,
dude, that's what happens though. Like life comes up, and you got to make space for it. Otherwise, passions become burdens.
Yeah, but I've stayed in it though. 20 years. I've been good. So
Now, did you start when you were up in the Massachusetts area, or?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I was in the New England Garrison. I got in. That's how I joined the 501st. I got inducted into the 501st from the NEG, the New England Garrison, and then I was NEG until 2009. So from 2005 2009. So for the first 4 years, I was New England. Yep. And then
so we probably know some. We probably know some. We have some mutuals, most likely.
Mutual friends. Yeah. I was on the command staff for 1 year for the NEG. Okay. They gave me like the lowest title you can have, where you really don't do anything, but they probably felt bad for me because I did so many events. They were like, we gotta throw Brian a title for a year, So I was like assistant to the assistant, like
assistant to the assistant regional manager,
right? I even think so.
That immediately popped into my head too, Ian.
The assistant to the assistant regional manager.
Yeah. Yep. So that was me as so. Yeah, but it's cool. Here's also 2 fun facts about the 501st. I was only the 4th approved Jawa worldwide in the 501st. Worldwide. Now we have like 4 in every city, it feels like, right?
I was unaware that Jawa was a thing.
Oh, it's huge because it's massive. It became there's so many Jawas now in the 501st, but I was only the 4th one ever approved. And when I met George Lucas, and I had my costume, and he kind of made a joke. When I met him, it was it was a whirlwind, and it was briefly, and but he did see my costume, and he chuckled and said something along the lines of that looks good enough. What did he say? He says, you look good enough. I would have casted you like that, or something. He made some joke about like your costume is like good enough, or I would have just
that good,
right. A couple months later, do you know in A New Hope, the Jawa who actually shoots R2, and where R2 goes, right, and does the spinny and then falls over, right? And you know, the first time we see a Jawa, the guy who's in that Jawa costume is actually that's the costume that I modeled my Jawa costume after. That's when I took all the screenshots of. I did the 360, from above, from below. I really honed in on him. Well, I met him in person, the guy who's in that costume. And I was showing him my costume, and his statement stands out more than what George Lucas said to me. His statement was, he says, your Jawa is a better Jawa than mine, than what they gave me on set. Awesome. He says mine was better quality than what they made him wear, like to film the movie. I was like, that's a win. I got my picture taken with him. We like got our arms around each other. He's also 5'4", so it was pretty awesome. Then we made out and stuff. So
that's good.
No, okay, we didn't.
Making memories.
Just wrap up the night there.
So, I'm not going to lie, Rule 34 exists for a reason. So somewhere out there are people searching for videos of Jawas. So
yeah, and might be some Jawa porn that I might be in a couple episodes of. So
yeah, Only Wotides is a huge website coming out now.
This took a turn.
Hey, you asked me to be on your show. I'm telling you right now, like,
no, I got to admit. So I'm always very hesitant with, I kind of slow burn on my humor,
right?
Because you never really know how people are going to take some things.
Sure.
And I'm just liking the way this is cooking. Like, this is good. It's dry. There's going to be people that don't know we were joking. What's that?
Wait until we're backstage again. That's when the clothes come off.
Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah. Normally, Ian, he's disappointing me tonight. I'm going to blame it on his tiredness today.
Well, and I think so. I have a ton of respect for authors just in general, because like I am your 100% prototypical. I'm going to eventually write the great American novel once I retire and buy a typewriter that I don't need and decide
get the bottle of champagne and the single cigarette ready.
Yeah, all of life's distractions have finally parted, because that's really what was preventing me from putting paper to pen, was just life being distracting.
Ian's gonna be the next Paul Sheldon.
Yeah, no, Ian's gonna be the next Bobby Long. Not that was a deep cut literary reference.
Yeah, it was.
No,
I think that went over my head. I'm not sure what happened there.
So
Bobby Long, I know that name.
So there's a film that was essentially a tragic reinterpretation of literary impact on people. And it all stems from the Carson's book, The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, which is a phenomenal book. If anybody, if nobody's read it,
I've heard of that.
It's a beautiful character piece, set somewhere between like 1938 and 1950, if you just skipped the fact that a world war happened. It's not very clear on like where it's falling in relation to the world wars, because it could have been coming off the cusp of one, or it could have been coming off the cusp of two. It's not super clear, but it's set in a very transient town, and you're following a group of people in this town all through this essentially like 6-month period, and there is no point outside of the characters. Like, there's no grand climax if you're waiting for the aliens to invade or for the war to hit suburbia. None of that actually happens. All of the drama is very real, well-written interpersonal drama. That book was the inspiration for the movie Love Song for Bobby Long.
Okay.
Which, are you familiar with the show Suits?
Yes.
Okay, so the guy who hires the fake lawyer, he, very young actor at that point, Scarlett Johansson and John Travolta, in one of the only movies he actually, I feel like, acted in, and he wasn't just like him since the 70s. He did a phenomenal job in it. Follows a washed up literature professor and his TA who like screwed up their careers and ended up in New Orleans and is just living this like shattered, once upon a time intellectual, lives his entire life through the books that he's read, doesn't actually interact with society in a meaningful way anymore, and is just kind of drinking himself to death.
Right.
Phenomenal film, backed by a phenomenal book. Sorry, that was an incredible tangent.
No, so what you're talking about is, so it's books that are a snapshot in time, where you don't necessarily know what happened before the book starts. You don't necessarily happen what happens after the book ends. And like you said, there's no real climax, right? There's no like Avengers fight scene at the end, but it's a snapshot in time of these characters because they're alive and they're living, and the book is just like what's happening to them during this span of time in this situation. And one of my novels is like that. I have a cyberpunk dystopian novel that's like that.
Okay.
Where, it's set way in the future. I don't tell you where. I don't give you a year, right? Because they're not walking around saying the year all the time to each other, like we don't, right?
Yeah, I can't believe it's 2025 already. Already, Brian.
Yeah, exactly. America has instead of states is now just broken down into 6 regions.
So it is 2025. Okay,
yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. But one of the things that I liked about it's called Tomorrow People, and that came out last year. That's actually Tomorrow People is my most recent published novel before the book I wrote at Missouri State Penitentiary. It was actually the book that I had just finished when I went on my first ghost hunt at Missouri State Penitentiary and got the idea to write These Walls Still Talk. But Tomorrow People is exactly that. It's a snapshot in this dystopian future. Mm-hmm. And it's 65,000 words of, this Mad Max meets Johnny Mnemonic like landscape. Like you said, there is a climax, but it's a climax for the characters. It's not a climax for like the whole dystopian.
Yeah, it's not a societal climax or
like Maze Runner. I like Maze Runner was great. I love Maze Runner, but there was an ending to the dystopian society. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we ended things. Like Tomorrow People, my novel. The climax only happens with the characters' struggle, but the world is still in this dystopic, thing. Like nothing got solved for the world, So it's a snapshot.
So personally, I love those kind of stories. Like that's really my jam.
Probably, I think if you do it, because the way you were talking about the novel that you were talking about, you sound like you were describing Tomorrow People, except my book is a cybernetic dystopian novel. But it's very similar. It's just like you're encapsulated in time.
And I think what's really good about like a character piece book as opposed to like a world changing, you found the hero, you're a wizard, Luke, right. Type stories is you can have whatever degree of setting and, you can do it high fantasy, you can do it cyberpunk, you can do it in any setting. And to me, and this is, maybe it's a hot take, maybe it's not, but I think it makes it palatable and enjoyable to so many more people.
Yeah.
Because the science isn't the front running. The fantasy isn't the front running.
Yeah.
Like you're not being constantly impressed by that new spell he has or that new piece of tech or that you're actually just following someone that you're almost forced to, you may not like them, but you're forced to empathize with them because you're seeing through their lens so consistently.
Yeah. And it's funny because so what I did with Tomorrow People was it's set in the far future, but I do not describe a single piece of technology they have because it just exists to them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, so let's say somebody who'd never seen a car before, like we don't talk about how cars work all day long. Right. We get in our car and we go. So with this, I did very little world building because I just put my characters in this world, and the reader sees the world as through the eyes of the characters who exist in the world that always existed for them. So it's very low techy. While there's gadgets and gizmos, I don't spend 4 pages describing how or why it works. It just works for them because it works for them.
Not to evoke the great antithesis of the 501st. But no one ever described how a replicator replicates on Star Trek.
Right.
Like no one questioned how Picard got his Earl Grey. Right. And it wasn't until, I don't know, 1991, maybe 1989, that anyone was even talking about kyber crystals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like no one was talking about pouring your hatred into a kyber crystal to turn it red, and that's why you're actually Sith now.
I remember the first time I heard, a kyber crystal being the power for a lightsaber. I was like a teenager, and I was like, I've been watching Star Wars since like I was a year old. Like, why am I just hearing this term now? Like, why do we need to explain the technology? We've accepted lightsabers. Like, we blindly accepted.
We already said because they're Jedis. That's why it works.
What? Because
they're Jedi.
Like, of course. Why wouldn't they have lightsabers? Like, that's the question, right? Why wouldn't they have them? So, like, when I was writing Tomorrow People, I very much wanted that. I want the reader accepts it because the characters accept it because it's where they live. It's what they do. There's no explanation for it.
And like for me as a reader, I get distracted by that stuff, right? Like, so when an author really feels like they need to justify either like some mechanic in the book where they really need to justify it, that's where like I just tune out. And it's like, I don't need the main character who's actively using this to screw up my suspension of disbelief by like almost acknowledging that I'm watching.
Right. It's an info dump.
That's who it's for.
Right. Yeah. So like my time travel novel, Yours Truly 2095, I took a Michael Crichton route with how time travel works. Where I took science and I used it as science fiction. So time travel works in my novel through quantum physics, quantum mechanics. There is no time machine. There's no DeLorean. There's no phone booth for Bill and Ted. There's no whirring machine with lights, like Orson Welles.
There is well over half of the time travel community right now that is going to boycott you for going Bill and Ted for the phone booth thing.
And not like Doctor Who and shit.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Because to be fair, Bill and Ted stole that from Doctor Who.
The TARDIS came first.
But I throw that out a lot because no one expects me to go Bill and Ted there when I say that. Right.
So, no, 100%. When you said Bill and Ted, I was like, oh no, that wasn't where I thought we were.
So again, my time travel novel, I have zero tech. There isn't a machine. Like, there's zero tech. It's quantum mechanics. Like, it's cut a particle in half and send it a million miles apart and spin it one way, and its other half will spin the other way, no matter how far apart the particles are. And that's how my time travel works in my novel. And that's it's said in like, I think in a matter of 4 sentences, just so the reader understands it's quantum entanglement. That, once I say it, once I throw it out there, then we never revisit it. We don't need to talk about it anymore, so.
Well, and that's the thing is like, there is an art to it. Like, if there is something that's going to get, at least if you're making it a point to say like, hey, this works because of reasons you don't think.
Yeah.
I think that there's some leeway for it.
Right.
But like, I've never once asked how the 3 shells work. I'm just right there with Stallone trying to figure it out. Right.
I don't know if you've ever seen the Christopher Reeve movie Somewhere in Time.
No, I don't think I have.
That's probably like my second favorite time travel movie of all time. And it's Christopher Reeve. And he made it in between Superman 1 and Superman 2, I think.
Okay.
And it's a time travel novel. And he time travels because of a penny on his nightstand. But you don't ever question the theory behind the penny. You blindly accept that he can do it, right? And it doesn't take away from the movie at all. It's actually based on a Richard Matheson novel. You know who he is? Richard Matheson. He wrote What Dreams May Come.
Yep.
He wrote something else huge that I'm gonna kill myself for if I don't remember. But he did What Dreams May Come. He did Somewhere in Time. He did something else. Something else big that you would know that's like more recent. Anyway, point being is, again, let's not over explain. It's a penny on the night table, or it may have been a nickel. It's a coin on the,
it's a coin. Yeah.
Like that's the catalyst. Like, we don't question it.
Oh yeah, I Am Legend.
I Am Legend, exactly. Oh, he wrote like I Am Legend.
I didn't realize that. Hell House, I Am Legend. He's got some bangers in here.
Yeah, Richard Matheson he's one of those like sleeper names, right? Where you don't know his name until someone starts spitting his list, and you're like, he wrote all that, Are all these movies are all these movies are based off of his short stories? I think he did short stories and not novels. If I'm not like he did like novellas and short stories.
Well, I'm looking at his actual like books.
Okay.
And he's got A Stir of Echoes, Shrinking
Yeah,
Man,
that's right. He did Stir of Echoes too.
Somewhere in Time, Shadows of the Sun, They Are
Stir of
Here.
Echoes is one of my all-time favorite horror movies too. So
They Are Here is one of mine.
Yeah. Yes.
Because who does not love a movie that somebody greenlit Rowdy Piper as the principal actor?
I would do that all day long.
As would I.
I'd make the Junkyard Dogs the sidekicks, and George the Animal Steel is the villain. And
didn't he pass away?
Yeah, he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, Richard Matheson is one of those people that like he's not a household name, but all of his movies.
But he is. All of his works are
household names, but his name itself is not.
Camp Pleasant, The Man Who Made the World. I've actually read most of these.
I mean, that's almost like Stephen King. I mean, people don't associate Stephen King with Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, Stand By Me,
Running Man.
They don't associate that because they look at it as only horror.
Right.
And I mean, some of his greatest books. Yeah. Dolores. I mean, some of his greatest books were short stories. 1408.
Yeah.
A fantastic movie.
Yep.
Shawshank Redemption and what is it? The Shawshank Redemption and the Rita Hayworth.
Yep.
Or the Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption.
Rita comes first, yes. And Novella comes first, yes.
Like those short stories were evolved into 2-hour, 3-hour movies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's Frank Darabont.
Oh God, Frank Darabont is amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and the first thing that Frank Darabont ever directed was Stephen King's short story, The Woman in the Room.
Yes.
And Stephen King sold it to him for $1. He let him make it. It was the first Dollar Baby movie.
Yep.
And Stephen King was so impressed with it that when Darabont came knocking to do Shawshank, he said, absolutely.
Yep. There are, and it's very...
And that was after he did Nightmare on Elm Street 3, right? Darabont did Nightmare on Elm Street 3? He did one of them. I think it was 3. I think he did Dream Warriors.
Yeah, it was Dream Warriors, yeah.
Yes.
But it kills me because one of my favorite adaptation, I'm sorry, but the visual display of it was from Stephen King myself was The Shining.
Right.
And that is his most hated movie.
Well, that's why he remade it.
That's because of Kubrick.
Right. That's why he did his miniseries.
Yes.
Oh. So most hated might be a stretch. He had the most grievances with The Shining, but
Lawnmower Man was his most hated.
That and Maximum Overdrive.
Well, he directed Maximum Overdrive, though.
He doesn't remember Maximum Overdrive.
No, I know, because he was all coked out. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. He's like, I don't.
Hearing the stories are it's just absolutely amazing. He's like, yeah, I don't even remember writing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild to think though, because as a kid, I watched that movie and was like, this is amazing.
Yep.
And now fast forward, it's like going back to watch the old Ninja Turtle series. It's like, wow, no.
Just
what happened here?
Yeah. So there was so that was originally the short story that was based off was called Trucks, not Maximum Overdrive.
Yes.
And then they made the movie Trucks. Then Trucks came out as Trucks later.
Yes. Where the tentacles were coming out of the,
which was like
the truck
even worse. I was like, how did they make this even worse and even campier than Maximum Overdrive?
Right.
Well, that was Jamie Kennedy, right? Didn't they have? It was like and David Arquette. I think it was Jamie Kennedy and David Arquette in that one.
Yep, that's correct.
Oh, that was a rough one.
Yeah.
All right. So one last thing before we wrap up here, Brian. I know you're out there. There's so many kids out there growing up. You have posters of cars on your wall. You're like, this is gonna be my dream car.
I had bands on my wall. Bands.
Yeah.
I didn't have cars.
But you had that in your mind of this is my dream car. I will own one of these cars one
Pinto?
day.
Yeah, 1971 Pinto.
Ooh, was it mustard yellow or did you have like the
mustard yellow? No, it was mustard yellow with the brown racing stripe down the side.
Nice. Ooh. Yeah.
Nice.
Or as we like to call that, the shit streak.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, I brought home my orange couch strapped to the roof for my
corduroy
shack.
orange crows.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, mine was a Gremlin when I was growing up, but I mean, no, but you actually own your dream car that you have, and that's a 1981 DeLorean.
Yep.
Now, fully restored, how hard is it to get parts?
When I bought her with only 17,000 miles on it. In fact,
wow.
So the title, because you have to do the odometer reading on the title. Yeah. On my title it says 17,505. That's what I signed off on. But yeah, so she was pretty much mint condition. I did very little. It needed very little. The things that I did do to the car was preventative, not because it needed it. So we replaced the entire fuel system and the entire coolant system, not because either of those were failing or needed to be replaced, but where it had 40-year-old rubber hoses. Right? Yeah. So like, at what point was one of those fuel lines going to pop and spray fuel all over a hot engine, and then my car was going to explode? So
exactly.
So while it didn't need it, I did it. I didn't do it. I had a mechanic do it, but we did it just so I wasn't on the highway on 95 idling in traffic, and that's when the radiator was going to decide to finally, fall out of the car. You know what I mean? Because we're talking about 40-year-old parts. So when people ask the question about the restoring, I kind of have to follow up with the fact that I didn't have to do a single thing to that car. It was a turnkey DeLorean. It was a garage queen for its entire life. It had 17,000 miles on it. I did not have to do anything to that car. Everything I did, I chose to do because I was scared that something would fail at the most unopportune time, So, and I just keep up with the maintenance. And she's never let me down. So I did some cosmetic things, things I didn't really even need to do. Just, it's like, the seat covers, the seats look a little, 40-year-old leather seats, So I bought stock seats though, but I bought brand new old stock from DeLorean. So I replaced them with stock seats that had never seen air, had never touched air yet. They were still in their original shrink wrap. So
wow, okay.
But again, I didn't have to do that, right? But that was just a cosmetic thing that I wanted to do to it.
So just out of curiosity, when you redid the fuel system, did you have the bioprocessor installed behind the driver's seat, or did you stick with the plutonium?
I stuck with the stock setup. The only thing that we did differently was we did braided stainless steel fuel lines, and we upgraded to the new fuel sender, which works more digitally than it did, before it worked on a weight where there was a plunger in there that kind of bobbed, and it told you how much fuel you had or how much to send. Now it's all done with a little it's a little more like a relay is kind of.
So we found the subject matter you're not going to joke about. That's what I'm hearing.
What do you mean?
I asked you if you put the bioprocessor behind the driver's seat, or you stuck with the plutonium.
Oh,
and you actually went. You're like, no, we did the thread.
He went straight in,
wow,
I'm ignoring this bullshit. This guy can take Back to the Future right out of here.
That's on me. Every once in a while, someone will get me. Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you upgraded a flux capacitor too. So I
have a flux capacitor in it, but I only put it in when I'm doing I'm going to a convention or a car show. I do Cars and Coffee a lot. The local Cars and Coffee. So the flux capacitor that I have sits on the cargo shelf, where it would be in the movie, but it's fully it removes in it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So it just sits there, and then I plug it in and I turn it on so kids can be like, ooh, and people can take pictures, and then I take it out when I get home. So
you built the car, not the prop.
Yeah, I didn't build it. There's somebody that builds them for us, but yeah, it was built, and then it just sits on the cargo shelf. And when I drive the car normally, I don't have it in. I only put it in when I'm, if I'm going to a kid's birthday party, or somebody wants to see the car, or they want me to come over for some sort of block party for an afternoon, to show the neighbors. I'll because everyone
don't have you don't have the analog dash or anything like that.
No, everything's stock. I still have the stock 1981 Craig cassette radio tape player that still works, still plays cassette.
Amazing.
It still plays.
Awesome.
I have the Back to the Future cassette in it. Yeah.
Oh,
the soundtrack.
Awesome. That's great. Now Damien asks, she's like, did the car choose you, or did you choose the car?
What am I, Arnie? And it's not Christine. Come on. No, I think it's lightning in the bottle that I found the one that I found. I truly think that this was the car for me. And I had almost bought a DeLorean before in my life, and things happened. And I think it was because I was supposed to have this one, which is a really weird statement when you're talking about an inanimate object. But
Nope.
I truly feel like
no, it's not.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't, man. Because I mean, just talking from my side again, I had to build my first car before my father let me drive.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was 12 years old, I bought a 1971 Challenger, and like.
So my dad was a professional drag racer, and he raced a 70 Challenger.
Yeah, they're amazing cars because you can fit the 440 big block on it, and it actually the rear channel set without having to actually trim out any of the body. You can put a secondary camshaft.
Yeah,
this isn't a car show.
That's tomorrow.
And the rear axle on the 70 and 71 can actually be shortened to 3.5 feet, so you can actually put drag sets on it without any issues.
Yeah. New England drag. I grew up like New England Dragway. That was part of my childhood.
Same.
So, yep.
We actually in the late 90s we brought it up. And ironically enough, ours was mustard yellow, but it had the black vinyl top and hood covers. And we used to take it up for the 1/8 of a mile up at the dragway pretty consistently. And we used to have my sister drive it because she weighed about 85 pounds.
I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to show you something real quick.
All right. And yeah, we used to take it up for the 1/8 of the mile.
My dad's racing jacket with all the patches in the dragway.
Amazing.
And in the mile an hour is that you get a patch if you broke that mile.
Yeah.
Wow.
So 125, 150. This is the 70s. So this is my mother's actually. This was the pit jacket for his pit crew. My mother gave it to me.
That's awesome.
This is the actual pit jacket from the late 70s.
I don't think we ever got that. I don't think we got the patches. We got the tickets and we have the arrest records, but we never got the patches. Oddly enough, Marshfield Police Department didn't give out patches for breaking 100 miles an hour in the center of town at 2 a.m.
Really? Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. No, well, so this is the late 90s,
right?
So when you're in the off season in my hometown back then, it was a population of maybe 13,000 people, maybe, and the town was closed at 7 o'clock at night. Like the entire town was. We had at that point the only stoplight we had was at the highway. That was the only stoplight in town. Everything else
and that was the tree.
Yeah, pretty much. And so there was a stretch from pretty much the Veterans Memorial Park,
Ventress, yeah,
to Veterans Memorial Park to Ventress Memorial Library.
Ventress, yeah,
which is exactly 3/4 of a mile.
Saj Ventress? I didn't know she had a library.
In Marshfield, Massachusetts.
Star Wars there. Star Wars deep cut.
Well, after Lucas brought her in, it was a thing. And no, my father and I would go out at we'd leave the house at 1 a.m. and the whole town would be empty. And every now and again, you'd bump into a cop that you knew, and you could race a Crown Vic because they would saddle up right next to you. You give a rev, and the local cop would be like, "All right, let's do this. Let's see who'd win."
That's cool.
And there was a couple of times where it was either myself driving or my father driving, because it happened to both of us, where we would tear through town or come off the line against a cop, and they would just go to our house and wait for us to come home. They wouldn't even bother trying to pull us over. They would just drive it. They'd be waiting in our driveway when we got home, and they'd be like, "All right, guys, license and registration."
That's funny.
45 minutes ago, I had you at 95 and a 15. So
yeah,
let's see how this goes. And they were only pissed because we won.
My dad raced 2 dragsters. Yeah, so he had 2 dragsters and then the Challenger, and he had one of the dragsters delivered. This is a story that I'm told from my mom. I don't know how true this is, but I'm just going to tell how she tells it. And it's quick because I know we have to go. He had one of the dragsters delivered to his work at 2 a.m. Had no way to trailer it to the house, so drove a dragster through the streets of Lynn, Massachusetts, to the house. Now dragsters don't have brakes. right?
No. This is, I 100% believe this.
So he waited 2 a.m, so he knew there was no traffic, and drove the dragster through the streets of Lynn to the house because he had no
downshifting to slow down every time.
Tell me that's not wild. Do you imagine like
it's Lynn
from a bar,
but it's
like,
Lynn.
It's Lynn.
That's Lynn, man.
Like,
that is Brian. I don't know how much you know about Lynn, but that is Lynn.
Well, that is stereotypical Lynn.
Driving right now around Lynn that have no brakes at all.
Yeah, so they're
doing it at noon.
At the time, my dad lived on Western Ave, right past Buchanan Bridge. So coming off Salem, like Salem's behind you, Buchanan Bridge, and then Western Ave, and so that's where he lived. And he was the manager of the Goodyear downtown Lynn. So he went from the Goodyear in downtown Lynn up Western Ave to the house with a dragster at 2 a.m.
That's like 7.5 miles, man. That's not a short jaunt. That's not like taking it around the corner.
I only wish there were iPhones back then, so like somebody have that on video. I'd love to have seen that, you know.
But I mean, I guarantee you, it was just downshifting every time coming up to intersections, like that hard downshift.
You're praying.
The bag out of the transmission.
Like, blowing through the intersection, right? Taking out the front lattice of the dragster. So anyway, yeah.
That is absolutely amazing.
And so, all right, so you have the familiarity. You may enjoy this one call out. This is the last thing I'll say about cars. But the only thing I ever saw in Fast and the Furious that just destroyed my ability to believe anything or the credibility in there
is when they went to the outer space.
Nope, that's not it. It's when he went to the Charger and it turned over on the first flip.
That's what did you get?
For the rest of the movie, I was out. Checked out.
You're like, check, please.
Yep. When he just went into the Charger and it was like immediately.
You're used to been like,
right. Get out the carbon choke cleaner, go out to the front, pop it in the manifold.
So something people don't know about the DeLoreans, unless you own one, is when you get in the car, you can't just turn the key and start it. Well, you can, but it's going to cough and sputter and be rough. You have to click it once, listen for the fuel pump to prime, wait for it to stop priming, and then you go again and start the car. If you don't wait for it's like priming a lawnmower. Yeah. Right. The car actually has to prime itself, or it won't start, or it starts awful. So it's so funny to like, get in that car, because I drive it so much, get in it and be like, and I wait. And sometimes it primes like 4 or 5 times. And I can hear it like, I'm like, oh my God, you done priming? And then it stops making the noise. I'm like, okay, we can start the car now.
You're waiting for it to hit pressure.
I mean,
that's
right.
But that's what it is. With some of the older cars, you really have to know the vehicle more than modern ones. You can't just plop down and get into it. That's why I think that's one of the funniest things about the Fast and the Furious is they act like those cars just go. Like you just run in, slam the clutch, fire the key in, and you're gone. And no.
And you're winning pink slips all around.
Yeah. It's, and the fact that they thought a Charger would be a 6-second car without cutting out half the body. Anyway. Sorry.
No, it's fine. This is good. I just like, because this is like the first podcast I've done in a really long time where like people didn't want like staying at the Missouri State Penitentiary for 8 weeks to write a horror novel wasn't the main topic.
Well, I think for us, one of the big things is we're here to have a conversation and just kind of see where it goes.
Right.
Like it's not going to be a pointed agenda. If you want to talk about that, we've got 40 minutes until the next show. We can carve some time out and you can give your press junket about what that was like, if you like.
No, I've been on, a lot of the Get Haunted Network podcasts, and they've been fantastic and some awesome questions. And I've gotten to really deep dive into that experience, but I realized when I did the last podcast about it that I was like burnt out. I was like, I don't think I want to talk about this anymore.
See, what we like to say over here is we call it Compass Curiosities because you never know where the needle's going to land.
Right.
So we can go off in so many different directions. And, hearing about your hobbies and things on the side, being a detective, being, an author, whatever, doesn't make who you are. It's all your little side things, your 501st, your DeLorean, all that makes you the person you are. So it's more or less like finding out that person behind the words in the page.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Hey, no worries.
This is good.
No, it was absolutely fantastic. Yeah. I mean, go ahead, Brian, go ahead and plug yourself one more time. Tell people where they can find you, where they can purchase your books.
Super easy. All of my novels, all 11, and then my 12th novel comes out in September. So, but all of my novels are available for paperback, ebook, and audiobook. And that's important because I know a lot of people listen. They don't read.
Ian does as well. He literally, he tells me he goes through
a
couple books a week.
I love my audiobook readers. So audiobook wise, I'm available Audible, Spotify, iTunes, Chirp, Findaway, anywhere. And all of my paperback and ebooks are available in all bookstores. So Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Walmart, online. So if you go, barnesnobles.com, booksamillion.com, walmart.com, amazon.com, obviously, some of the other smaller bookstores, some Barnes & Nobles on the East Coast do carry me, but there's shelf space and I'm not, the Stephen Kings of the world. So it's okay, but I'm available anywhere. If anybody wants a signed copy, any book that's bought from my website, I sign it the day that I mail it. So they're not pre-signed, right? I actually sign it the day that I mail it, do a little thing. And my website is myname.com.
Yep. Scrolling across there at the bottom for you.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's brianpaone.com. So it's very easy to remember. And also on my website you can sign up for my newsletter, which goes out once a month, where sometimes I have deals, promotions, updates on what I got coming out next, et cetera, et cetera. There's also an events link, and it shows all of the events that I'm doing for the rest of the year. And I don't just stay East Coast. I do events, all over the country. Sometimes I speak at writers' conferences and stuff. So, yeah. And I also answer, every email or message that I'm sent. Anybody reads any of my stuff. So, and there is, and I was going to finish on. So I actually want to finish the show on that top one because that is next. My book, These Walls Still Talk, which I wrote over this course of 8 weeks inside the Missouri State Penitentiary, at night, most of the time alone, usually in the dark. It's about a ghost hunt gone wrong. I kept a diary while I was in there for those 8 weeks, and we published the diary at the end of the book. So you get the novel, and then once the novel is done, then my diary of everything that happened to me while I was in there for those 8 weeks is also in the book. But the book release party itself is June 21st at the Missouri State Penitentiary with Get Haunted. They are hosting a overnight ghost hunt of MSP, coupled with the book release party. So we're doing the two things in one. So it's a book release party and the overnight Get Haunted event, all happening at the same time, all at MSP. There's a limited amount of tickets. Sheila, who's in charge of MSP, the prison boss, gave us a very specific number that we could not go over. And so it's one of those things where once the last ticket is sold, if you come crying to me or Rob or anybody and Get Haunted and are like, oh, I was going to buy a ticket, but I couldn't, we are literally going to have to tell you there's nothing we can do. We were given a very specific maximum number. And if you didn't get a ticket, then that's on you for sleeping. And I know they've been selling. So so if you go to my website, brianpaone.com, you can get the link right from there, or you can go to gethaunted.com. Both ways will get you to the page that you're looking at right now. And it's going to be great. We're going to be there all night. We're going to have food. We're going to have a scavenger hunt. In the winner of the scavenger hunt throughout the night is going to get some. Let me say this. What we're offering to the winner of the scavenger hunt way exceeds the price of the ticket to go to this thing. So whoever wins the scavenger hunt is actually going to walk away with stuff.
Your DeLorean.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So, the scavenger hunt, the winner of the scavenger hunt's not getting like a Three Musketeers bar or something. Like you're the items that you're getting retail is more than the actual ticket to go to this thing. So, and I'll be there, and all of Get Haunted will be there, and all the family will be there, and all the MSP staff who are amazing people. That staff treated me like family. By about, by the end of the 8 weeks, I mean, they were inviting me to birthday parties and out to dinner with them, and they treated me like I was one of them by the end of that time, and they'll all be there, and it's gonna be great. So, and this is the last. Nope, that's not true. That's a lie. So I'm not gonna finish that sentence. But we are coming into a month away, and usually, the last month is when tickets really start selling, because now it gets close. People start booking the trip. So I'm really telling people, this isn't one of those like scare tactics, get it while you can. Like, once that last ticket is sold, like I have no
over.
To get
There's no more. Yep.
Like, over.
Well, and I think one of the things, especially about the paranormal community, is like really, I think more so than some of the other like hobby groups or interest groups, like we understand there's a super finite amount of people that can fit in a building. Like, you go to Comic-Con and it seems endless, 70,000 people in a room that's rated for 20.
I do AwesomeCon every year. I'm an author at AwesomeCon every year, and I don't know how they fit that many. I don't know. I have to mosh my way to the bathroom.
Yeah, like it's brutal.
I'm moshing through the crowd. I'm like, it's crazy.
It's been a few years since I've done like an actual convention, but yeah, like I think the wife and I went to a Comic-Con 2 years ago, first time in probably 5 since we've had our son.
Yeah. And
it was just like, I walked in and I'm like, I can't do this.
I love it because it's sales, right? Like, so for me, from a vending standpoint, like, please be shoulder to shoulder, because that's more people I'm going to sell books to. But if I
as an attendee,
if I try to get my chicken nugget basket, I get asked to be crowd surfed to the, to the little cafe that's in the corner. So the thing about MSP is it's not necessarily that the buildings will be full of people. It's because it's in the dark. They don't want accidents. They don't want people tripping.
Well, with the historic locations, there's so much liability involved with that stuff that like you just really have to be respectful, because it's tough. Russ and I are part of a group that we actually manage now 3 locations. And they're all historic, and they're all incredibly old, and they're all operated by nonprofits who can't afford to be sued.
Right.
So, we say you can have 8 to 10 people in there. The building's rated for 150.
Right.
But when everybody's tripping over themselves and the lights are out and it's laser grids and Estes methods and
the other thing too is like you have to have a certain number of guests per staff member, right?
Yeah.
And that's the other thing.
You have to have that ratio.
That's the thing that Sheila's looking at, right? Sheila's also looking at, well, I can't have 300 people and only like 5 tour guides, staff members. Like, how is that? It's like you can't, it's like having a lifeguard trying to watch 1,000 people in a pool, right? It's
of course,
someone's getting hurt. So, yeah.
No, that's one of the biggest things. It's not only just because you also want it to be an intimate setting, especially for the book release and things like that. And you also want people to enjoy the investigation,
right?
So limiting that amount of people and whatnot is definitely a smart move. Because of the simple fact you want to make it enjoyable for everyone that's there.
Right.
So I mean. But Brian, thank you so much for catching us up on ESP. Excuse me. Well, wrong prison there. MSP.
I got
you. You have been absolutely amazing.
You've been amazing.
Oh, appreciate that.
You me amazing. Heart hands.
Hey, I couldn't do this without you guys. Like the guests are what makes the show what it is. And I'm glad we were able to kind of break away a little bit from your normal humdrum of the podcast you do and things like that. I like to send it out to let's throw a reel out there and see what catches.
You made me realize that today's my 20th anniversary of being in the 501st. I would not have.
Congratulations, by the way.
I have to go post about that now because I can't believe I missed my 20th anniversary all day. If you hadn't asked me about it and I didn't look at my laptop clock and then do the math and be like, holy shit, today's the 20th anniversary. So
no, Brian, but it's been absolutely amazing, and thank you so much for coming on. Ian, do you have any parting words for Brian before he goes?
I thank you for coming on. We always appreciate people taking the time, and we love these conversations. And I'm glad to hear that it was kind of a change of pace,
a breath of fresh air, so to say.
Yes, yeah, no, and again, because there's people watching who have been on their show. That was not a knock to any of their shows.
No. I didn't
all.
take it as that. I don't think anybody out there did.
I just know that going into this show, for the first time I felt burnt out talking about MSV. I was like, oh my god, I want to talk. So glad we talked about it.
But it's true though. When you have something big that's prominent, that's what everyone's going to want to talk about, and we kind of go a different direction usually on our show. So.
Yeah. We did Jawas and DeLoreans, so I mean,
yeah. I mean, why not?
I'm gonna start a podcast called Jawas and DeLoreans.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, pop culture podcast. That would be absolutely mint.
People were like, "What the fuck's going on here? It's Jawas." Oh, I will wear my Jawa costume in my DeLorean and do podcasts.
Yeah, and you could do like Wootini Wednesdays.
Wootini Wednesdays.
Wootini Wednesdays.
Oh man, I love all of this. It's so great.
In a month out, we're going to see a post from Brian going, hey, I'm starting a podcast.
So you guys want to be my first guest on Jawas and DeLoreans
next Wednesday?
Sign me up. But Brian, thank you so much. I mean, you have been an absolutely amazing guest. As always with the show, you never know what you're going to get. This isn't Forrest Gump, but we always pull things out of the old bag and see where it goes.
Right, because you brought that up, what is your favorite candy bar?
My favorite candy bar, honestly,
Payday.
I have to say it's definitely a Baby Ruth.
Okay, all right. Next, favorite candy bar.
Payday. 100% Payday. Right. I take umbrage with this Baby Ruth bullshit because that's a child's payday. If you want nougat and peanuts, you don't need to cover it in chocolate. Just enjoy a payday like a grown-ass man, Russell.
See, Hannah in the chat room, she landed on my favorite candy,
Reese's
bar.
Is not a fucking candy bar. Reese's Cups aren't a candy bar. Reese's Pieces aren't a candy. That is candy. That is not a candy bar.
Reese's Fast Break, that's the only one that would come close because those are wafers.
You could call that, yeah.
So for me, all my kids know that in order to stay living in the house for another 365 days, on Halloween, they must turn over all their Three Musketeer bars to me.
It's the dad tax.
Yeah, Three Musketeer bars. And then they can stay in the house for another. And if I find that they skimped on one and I find one hidden in their room, it's a hard knock life for them.
So because Payday is never actually in the candy bag, my dad tax candy is typically Heath bars or Twix.
Oh, Twix is where it's at. I like
Twix is a good one, yeah. Especially
if
you toss the Twix in the freezer.
It's not. Reese's is not a candy bar. It's candy. It's great. It's wonderful. It is peak snack. It is like way up there, super high rated. It's just not a candy bar.
And Milky Way is like a Three Musketeer bar in a Rolo, like had a Love Baby.
Yes.
Yeah. Or they just skimped on the peanuts on a Snickers.
I guess so. I never thought of it like that.
It's the Mounds Almond Joy.
So wait,
it is.
Milky Way and Snickers is the Mounds Almond Joy. It's just missing the nuts.
You never know what's going to happen, folks.
Wow. This is fantastic. All right.
Never know what's going to happen. But Brian, thank you again so much, guys. Everybody listening, you guys have been absolutely amazing. You've been great in the chat rooms. Next week, we will be taking off because of Memorial Day. So enjoy the time with your family, your cookouts, whatever it may be. We will be returning on June 2nd. And I will have a surprise guest for you then. So, but until then, guys, it's a Jawa and a DeLorean. It's exactly what it is. You caught me.
Episode number 1.
But guys, thank you so much again. Like I said, we cannot do this show without you. All these fantastic people coming out and listening and supporting and everything like that. So you guys are the deepest of our appreciations. So Ian, I'll let you take this one out tonight.
All right, everybody, have a good night and stay blessed.
The first annual Maine Paranormal and Horror Con is coming to Maine on September 6th and 7th at the Augusta Civic Center. Come meet your favorite paranormal investigators, cryptid hunters, and horror icons. Special guests include John Zaffis, the haunted collector from Sci-Fi, Jeff and Willie from Mountain Monsters, Bob Elmore Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, CJ Graham, also known as Jason Voorhees from Jason Lives Part 6, Ronnie LeBlanc from Expedition Bigfoot, and many more to be announced. Tickets are on sale now. Go to mainparahorror.com to get your tickets and VIP packages now. For more information, check out Maine Paranormal and Horror Con on Facebook and Instagram.